Hi, it's Jamie with Jamie's Arts a la Cartes. Thank you very much for joining me. I have a fun project planned for us today. I hope this video inspires you to create something of your own. If you would, hit the like button and share the video with your friends. That helps me to grow this channel and to continue to bring you new projects. If you haven't subscribed yet, would you please consider subscribing? And if you have, thank you very much. Well, we have a lot to do, so let's get to it. All right, today our project will be to create curtains to go with the new blinds that we've just installed. And so my mother-in-law was kind enough to gift me her sewing machine. I'm very, very grateful for that. So that's what I'll use to create the curtains. All right, we've got a lot to do. Let's get to it. We began by taking down the existing curtains. I washed them and gifted those to my stepson and his family for their new home. Then my husband began hanging all the new blinds. It's a big job, but I think it's going to look really nice when it's done. All right, so I got my 4 panels cut, and the way I went about that is you get something like this when you go in and you order. We did get ours from Home Depot. They're not sponsoring this video, just happened to be after research where I found the best prices. And then they're level blinds, so we had them custom to our sizes. So what I did is I took the sizes that we had used to create the blinds, and then everything I researched said to add like 1.5 for the width. My front windows are large enough that I couldn't really do that, or I didn't know how to do that, is probably a better way to say it, because my fabric is like 45 inches wide and my window is 73 and a half overall. 73 and a half overall, and then 49 and a half lengthwise, so up and down. So my fabric is 45, so I had to cut it long ways to get the length of my window. And so what I'm going to end up with is, instead of 1.5, it's going to be like 1.2 whatever. So it'll be not as the pleats won't be as much, but we've got so much going on with the window now. It's going to be beautiful. The blinds are beautiful hanging up. Husband did a great job on those. But the next step, so I've got them cut out, and my mother-in-law had suggested using rickrack when I had practiced making just a little pillowcase. I'm not a seamstress, so that's my disclaimer. This is just me trying to have something pretty and not spend a bacoodle of dollars. So anyways, her suggestion was to, on my pillowcase, to cut with a rickrack. Well, I cut the first one with just plain scissors, and I was like, oh no. She did say use your pinking shears. So that's what I did on all the rest, which will help with the fray. So I've got the 4 panels cut for the 2 windows. So my next step will be to start working on getting that hem pinned in so that I can sew. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the 2 long sides, and then I'll come and do the bottom of the window. So basically, and I practiced on some existing blackout curtains that we had, because we're going to keep that on part of the windows. The living room will not need it because these blinds just work so well. But what I'm going to do is basically do what they call a finger press. So I've got that salvage, but I am going to go ahead, even though I need that width, I'm going to go ahead and roll it in one more time. And I'm going to finger press, and I really don't have to measure on this salvage, sorry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this salvage edge, bend it over, finger press it again, and then pin it. I don't really have to measure this side because the factory gave me that edge. So I'm going to work with that edge. Now on the other side, it has it also, since I'm using the full 45 inches. Look at that. And I might not even have to fold it over because it doesn't have any, like this has print on this side. And I'm going to cover that up. This side doesn't have it. So the way I'm going to gain some of that width back, since I'm kind of short width on these two windows in particular, I'm just going to bend it over. And again, I'm not going to have to measure. Is that amazing? I haven't found my little gauge thing that I saw on the videos that I watched. But see, you can just, this stuff is so cool. Look at that. I can just press it. I'll end up pressing and probably steaming these once I get them hung. But this is where we'll start right now. So I'll figure out what to do with my pins. Basically, I'm just going to try to get the 4 curtains pinned up lengthwise, and then I'll start sewing. That way I'm doing sort of the same thing. That kind of worked when I did the blackout. Repeat, 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 doing the same thing. I got better at it as I repeated those steps. This sewing machine that my mother-in-law gave me is a Viking, a Husqvarna Viking, and wow, it's amazing to sew with. I've only had very inexpensive, you know, Black Friday kind of sewing machines, and after you work with them for a while, they stop working, and I never could get the tension right. So anyways, I'm very, very grateful for this new machine. It has gone through multiple layers of blackout curtain material, and has worked very well for me. So this will take a little bit of time, so I'll get it pinned up, and then I'm going to finger press as I go, just to help it, make sure it lays flat for me on the machine. I'll get it all pinned up and come back to you so that you can see my attempt at sewing. Again, I'm not a seamstress. Kudos to all those that do this all the time. That's definitely a talent. Okay, we're ready to hem this one, and slowly but surely we are working our way through our list of curtains that we're trying to make. So this is super simple. It's just a straight seam. I've got it pinned and finger pressed. I'm going to use the guide on my sewing machine right here to help me stay in line. They say not to watch your needle, but to pick something to use as your guide. And for me, this little mark here works just perfect. So I'm going to sink my needle. I'm going to give it just a couple stitches and then go backwards, and that locks in my stitch. And that's just like that, and it's locked in. Just like that. That one's done. And then I go ahead, and so I don't have to come back and trim it again, I pull it out, and that's probably more thread than I need, but I'm not interested in saving thread at this point. I'm still pretty new at doing all this, so I'm just happy that I've got it going. So what I'll do with this piece here, is I got to trim the other end. And again, I'm going to just trim it and pitch it. It served its purpose. It's not really a lot of waste. But what I'll do is I'll take all of this now and I'll press it. I'll press my seams. And then if it needs it, when it gets on the curtain, like this little crease here, I don't know if the camera can see that, but there's a little crease right here. If I need to, I will steam that once they're actually hanging. Well, there we are. Another one down. So here is our last one for the living room. And we will get this bottom hem on here, get them pressed, and we can hang those. And then we're down just the last few. We'll sink our needle, go a couple, go backwards, and there we go. We're off to the races. Almost there. Lift your needle, put your foot up, which raises the needle, pull it out, and just snip it off. And just like that, the living room is done. Just got to get them hung up. Well, pressed and then hung. Well, there's the first set hung. Momo's little perch is done. The curtains are up. We decided not to go floor length. Kids, animals, and all that kind of stuff. So there we are. Very pleased with how they turned out. First window down. Here's our second window. Curtains are hanging. Very pleased with how they came out. It was a nervous challenge, but I think we conquered this one. We succeeded. Very happy with them. All right, now it's time to start on the office. So first thing I want to do is, here is that little note that tells me which way is up for the fabric. And then I'm just going to put a colored pin at the top of one corner here to tell me what is the top. Because like before, I want to go ahead and do the two sides. So basically, I'm just going to take the fabric, finger press it. Again, we have that salvage edge that is bound really nicely, so I'm not going to fold it over. And I'm going to let it be my measurement. Finger press it, which means just do that to it, and then give it pins every so often. These windows aren't nearly as big, so this will be a little easier for me to work with, which I'm grateful for. So basically just finger press and then pin it. So the lady at the fabric store told me this would be a great first project, which I've sewn in the past, but it's been a really long time, and I definitely didn't have this sophisticated of a machine to work with. So that sort of opens up a lot of opportunities to learn new things. I could never have really quilted effectively with minimal frustration, we should say, on my old machines. So I never even attempted it. All right, just like that, one side's pinned. We'll flip it over, and what I'll do is I'm going to basically tuck this over and then tuck it again, and that will cover up this writing and give it an edge to match the other edge, which sort of just helps it to look nicely finished. But I've got my pin up here so I remember which is the top, because once you start pinning this, you'll lose that little message. Oh, keep my fabric on the table. So basically I'm just going to finger press twice, and that using the pinking shears really did make a difference. Those that I did use the pinking shear on, they didn't ravel at all. If I used a regular scissors, every one of those raveled. Not terribly, but it's definitely something to make note of for future projects. Alright, so now I am sewing up the long edges of our curtains. And one thing I wanted to show you is when I did my research, everything told me do not watch the needle, but to find a place, even if you put like some painter's tape or something. I'm actually using this little guide that's right here, and I'm watching the edge of the fabric versus watching the needle. And my lines have been pretty straight so far, so it's just something simple like this. And then I make sure my needle is in the fabric when I stop, so that when I move my fabric around to adjust it and remove these pins, that my needle is actually holding my sewing spot, holding it in place. And it didn't stop quite in the fabric, so I just roll my little wheel over here to sink it into the fabric. using this guide over here, and then as I get to the end, I'm going to take it to the end, but then hit reverse just to give it a few stitches, and that basically just locks my stitch into place. Pull it out, and that makes it the bottom thread hook tightly into the top thread, and then I just cut it pretty close. Make sure this stays in here in this foot like it's supposed to be, and then that one trims right as you cut it off, and then you come back here to the front edge, or the top I should say, trim it off pretty close because all that'll be turned under. But there are our panels. So now I'll start pinning the ends, and then we'll be done. How about that? But again, I'm just going to do a little finger press. I'm going to do a small little seam like I did on the sides. That way I can do a wider seam at the top for my rod, and then make a little ruffled edge at the top. So basically I'm just going to finger press down and pin it. The corners I'm going to not fight with the finger press, and we'll do that when we're all done. And basically just pin it to keep it in place for me. Because what I'll do is when I'm done, I'll do both of them at the same time. And I'm going to make sure that they match exact lengthwise. I'll do that when I do the top. Actually, I'm going to do the top first so that I can make it match on the bottom. Like I said, I'm not a seamstress, just trying to make some curtains for my house. So what I want to do here on the top, so I'm going to start at the top, and I know I didn't cut this with rickrack, with the pinking shears. So I'm going to fold this over so they don't have a ravel issue. And we're going to pin this first just to see if the idea in my head will work in real life. So what I'm thinking to do this, and then to bend it down, and to measure, like maybe 3 inches. That way I can come down, like an inch. And then also a line here, and also a line here, and that'll take care of my raw edge. And then what this will do, I probably will do, because the rod is pretty small, I can do 1 inch, and what that will do is that will gather at the top. So I think that'll work. Worst case scenario, I sew it, don't like it, and I'll rip the seam out. But I think this will work. I'm going to get this all finger pressed along one side, along this one edge, and then come back and do the other edge. I'm sure there's a faster way to do it. If you want to show me a better way, leave it in the comments below. Watched a lot of videos, and I am trying to learn how to do this a little better, but this is where I'm at right now. Actually, I'm not going to take it to the end, only because I'm going to make sure it's going to work. So if I go to 6, that'll leave me 2. Okay, so we like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now take this and give myself 3 inches. 1, 2, 3. We'll pin it. This is where a gauge would really come in handy. And a gauge, basically, it does the inches for you. So I'm going to have to old school it with a ruler, because I haven't got a gauge yet. Make sure this is 3. I'll go ahead and pin it. And then I'm going to go ahead and give myself an inch here, just to, so that way I have an eyeball kind of thing that I can look at while I'm sewing that top line. It'll make better sense when I get it to the machine and show you. Okay. Got my sewing machine here. Alright, so I'm making a modification to my design. I had just created a, just to go over the rod, but I want to make them a little longer and then add a little ruffle, for lack of a better term, at the top of the curtain. So I am ripping out the seams to the curtains. And then what I'll do is I will sew a 6-inch strip to the top to create a new casing for the rod, and then have a little bit for that ruffle. So I'm in the process of taking out the seams at this top edge. It's kind of a pain, but once I hung them up, I wasn't quite happy with the look. So then after a little bit of research and brainstorming, I came up with this, adding it, and I can get away with adding it because it's going to be right at the seam. So it won't be, it won't look odd. So I'll get these done, and then we'll get to sewing them, and then we'll be on the last piece of this step. And we can get all these curtains hung and call this project done. This has been, I'm not a seamstress, I think I've said that, but I'm not a seamstress, so this has been a little bit of a challenge for me. But I've learned quite a few things just in this one little simple experiment. Alright, we've got all of our strips cut, and now it's time to get them sewn together so that we can get everything hung up. So I try to somewhat match the seam, and what I'll be, how I'll begin to add this piece on to the end. So I'm going to hem it to essentially create one continuous piece. I'll show you what that means. You notice I didn't do a lock stitch. I just did a straight stitch, no lock stitch, because it will be tucked in to the other parts, and I won't really need that lock stitch on that particular part. So now that I have that, what I'll do is I'm going to pin these pieces together to get my true length down here. So basically just going to put a very small hem to the original piece and then the addition, because I'm going to actually fold this over and sew it again. I'll get this pinned up, and then we can get to sewing. going to actually sew this before I sew the other. So I'm going to just basically leave this loose so I can get this up into the machine. Take two of the pins out. Pull the needle out. Cut. Go ahead and trim off this end here where we started. I'm going to go ahead and now pin this. And I do want to sew as close to this edge as I can. So we're going to actually flip it. And we're going to pull this one out. We're going to line up our two edges. Originally, I thought I'd hang some dark blue shears behind these curtains that I had made, but I just couldn't find any sheer material. So I went with some dark blue blackout curtains. They finish off these windows just perfectly. Well, I went with a lighter blue blackout curtain for the office, and those matched just right also. I sure did learn a lot in this project. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, would you please consider subscribing? If you have, thank you very much. Well, until next time, happy crafting!